Pagyo Rashipa Tuche Tempe Trinle Yarngoda Pelge Drolor Zampe Tse Parache Pande Lame Shabla Solvade Omo a Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timo Nisha Sane Karm Uta Varda Nishri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om a Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timo Nisha Sane Varda Nishri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timo Nisha Sane Karm Uta Varda Nishri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timo Nisha Sane Karm Uta Varda Nishri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timo Nisha Sane Karm Uta Varda Nishri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timo Nisha Sane Karm Uta Varda Nishri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timo Nisha Sane Karm Uta Varda Nishri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Daki Jetsun Lama Tuje Che Nyamda Dala Tuje Siksu So Gebe Shesan Dala Tendu Sunge Nawa Tsedo So Tseji Ningne Solwa Debe Tse Dechen Korlo Visu Lekshun Yila Sambe Dedun Malupa Beme Lunge Drubra Chingelo Dikdun Shabe Tse Dunge Namge Yinso Lekshune Labchen Tsoni Yonso Tsobadan Chera Nyedun Chamra Chingelo Chancho Parginin Tsen Tukun Tu Nyu Peme Siudro Lekshun Chancho Drube Gegen Kunshishi Tungen De La Drubra Chingelo Dagi Lona Chela Chokbadan Chemin Samjur Ngembash Chodan Tumbe Dedun Malup Bemel Hunge Drubra Chingelo Dorna Tengne Tsera Tamcheda Techi Pardone Kab Tamchetu Rese Kyamne Lama Keleme Tukche Chenge Dala Siksoso Gongyab Drewe Nyamta Dachala Jetsun Lame Tuche Rabgongne Kodan Sunge Nawa Dralme Tu Nyamsunyu Kesan Tobrash Kewa Kuntu Yanda Lama Dan Rame Cheki Pela Longchechi Sadan Lamgi Yente Rabzun Dorje Changi Kopa Nyurtobe Shoya Pakyuke Kudan Dagilu Pakyuke Sungdan Dagi Nga Pakyuke Tukdan Dagi Tön Yerme Chiktu Chingi Lo Makyuke Kudan Dagilu Makyuke Sungdan Dagi Nga Makyuke Tukdan Dagi Tön Yerme Chiktu Chingi Lo Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakya Muni Swaha Sashipeke Choshimeto Tramare Rabalingashin Nide Gempadi Sangye Shintu Mikte Ulwarki Drokunam Dashingla Chöpar Shoye Damanguru Ratna Mandrala Kam Niryatayami Sangye Chodan Tsoge Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapso Che Dage Chushe Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchra Sangye Druparasho Sangye Chodan Tsoge Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapso Che Dage Chushe Gibe Sonam Gi Drola Pinchra Sangye Druparasho Sangye Chodan Tsoge Chonam La Kyapso Chi Dage Chushe Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchra Sangye Druparasho. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge unto enlightenment through the practice of generosity and the other perfections. May I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Nel Buddha, nel Dharma e nel Sangha prendo rifugio fino all'illuminazione. Con la pratica della generosità e delle altre perfezioni possa io ottenere lo stato di Buddha per il beneficio di tutti gli esseri senzienti. Haye ke dan ludan chin ke drubundan da mi ke namdam druwa kuenge dhanama chi tsampa tamche ke tu dagi chu tento. Buongiorno. Good morning. Okay. Yesterday, we went through two very important aspects. More than aspects, I would say are two of the fundamental characteristics of our own lives in a way. One is that understanding that actually pain and suffering is not something necessarily negative by itself, but it's actually an alarm, a sign, an alarm ringing saying, hello, something is out of balance. And the same thing is not only for the physical pain, the same thing happens with the conflicts in society, in families, the conflicts that happen in every context. And the same thing happens also for our mental suffering. So when we go to look, okay, do I have mental suffering? I would say, mostly. Yes. In other words, do I live in a constant state of bliss and satisfaction? Okay, no. Okay. So, we are not in a constant state of pain and suffering. No. That's fortunate for us, but still we are not in a constant state of peace and satisfaction and joy. So, this is showing us that there is something that we are not really doing in the best way. There is something within our own way of acting where we have the capacity of choice and action, which we are not really doing in the best way. And so one of the points is for us to go through and make a sort of inner research. And we need to find out what are the ways in which we are not in harmony, which are the ways in which, we are relating to reality, the way in which we are using our mind, let's say, which is not harmonious, which is not coherent. Okay? And we gave two examples yesterday. One is the example that we relate to what is impermanent as if it was permanent. Okay? And this is by itself, it's quite a shocking thing actually, no? That, okay, it's so clear that it's constantly changing, and yet we relate to it as if it was static. So like something very common that we listen people saying is, that we may say also, is when we have something good, oh, I want it to be it forever. How can I make it so I remain like this forever? And they lived happily forever and ever, no? So when there is something good, we want it to remain forever. And then when there is something bad in our life, I cannot remain like this my whole life, you know? I listened to this many times from many people. And something which I taught many times, but I didn't say many times, sometimes yes, but many times no, is don't worry, it will not remain like this your whole life, or it will get better, or it will get worse. Like this, it will not remain. So if it gets worse, enjoy now. If it gets better, don't worry too much, because anyhow it's going to get better, no? The point is that it's always changing. But yet, even though our reality around us is constantly changing, we have the tendency to hold at it as if it was permanent. Okay? The other thing that very strong incoherence that we go through is the fact that we live in a reality that is subjective. We went through it in many details yesterday, through the 3 levels of interdependence. And even though when we analyze, it's clear that we live in a subjective reality, it appears to us as if it was objective. And we relate to it as if it was objective. That's a very strong level of incoherence, which generates a lot of conflict. Okay? The conflict is coming basically because we try to force reality to be what it cannot be. It's like if I take this object, no? Yesterday we used this example, and I say it must be a chocolate cake. And I try to force it in every way for it to become a chocolate cake. You know, and I will fight with people because they say it's not a chocolate cake. And I will get sad when I cannot eat it. And I will make a lot of trouble because I try to force the reality to be what I expect it to be. Okay? So I would try to force what is impermanent to be permanent. I would try to even, elude myself that it's permanent. You know? It's like we may do things in our face to try to cheat ourselves that we are not aging. Can this happen? What's the problem of aging? I really don't get the problem of aging. Some time ago, I got a small drone, and I was playing with it. The first day I was playing with it in my room. And then the drone went up, and then I took a picture looking down, and it was the first time that I saw that I'm losing hair here, And then when I saw that, I said, oh, wow, so nice. I am aging. That's a good sign. I am alive. Because the only alternative is to die young. So, it's fine, it's okay. But we try somehow to keep an illusion alive, as if it was real. And we are so attached to the illusion that even though we know it's an illusion, we try to leave it as if it was not an illusion. So we try to make impermanent things to be as if they were permanent. And we get upset when they show that they are not, even though actually we know. So where is the conflict coming? The conflict is coming because we try to force something that is impermanent to be permanent. We will never have success in it. We try to force that which is interdependent, that which is subjective, to be objective. We try to force our idealized image of reality to be the actual reality. In other words, we try to force the interdependence around us, the whole complex reality, to be what we think it should be. And we enter into conflicts, starting with the very simple conflicts that we have with people. You shouldn't be like this, you shouldn't do like this couldn't be like this, that shouldn't be like that. And from this we have aversion on one side, attraction on another, and like this we go on and on and on. Okay? And we also saw yesterday that what happens is that because we are not able to perceive clearly the level of interdependence, of codependence, of mutual dependence that exists between inner reality and outer reality, between object of perception and observer. We actually see as two complete, separate, independent entities. And by seeing ourselves so independent of each other, we create a very strong level of dependence, which means we project our happiness and our suffering in the objects of our senses. Okay? So, it's like Buddha said in one sutra, Dani dagi goyayin, dani dagi drayayin. I am my own protector, I am my own enemy. And the way how we live is exactly the opposite. I am not my protector, I am not my enemy. The object, the reality around me is where I take refuge. The reality around me is what makes me harm. Buddha said exactly the other way. So, we create a lot of conflict out of this. There is a lot of lack of harmony in the way how we relate to reality. And the root of our suffering, the root of this conflict, is coming from the fact that everything that we perceive appears to us as if it was of an autonomous, independent, inherent, objective reality. Just different ways to say the same thing, okay? And what we do in front of that appearance, we believe in it. We follow it. So now, we have many things to see today, so I'm not going to go into long introductions. I'm going to go directly to the point, okay? We have the possibility after to listen again, so I'm going to go quite, straightforward on what we have to see today. One important thing to understand it. Yesterday we used the metaphor of sickness, and saying that a sickness is when the body is not in harmony, when the elements are not in balance. Okay? So when our body is not in harmony, when there is a sickness, the way to cure the disease is by eliminating the disease or by generating harmony and health. Actually, it's by generating harmony and health. I need to generate the balance back in the elements. I don't need to go against the sickness. Okay? When we have an external component that generates the sickness, such as maybe like a virus or whatever, then okay, we need to protect, but we need also to reinforce the immune system and all the rest. But I'm not a doctor, I'm not talking about this. The main issue is that when there is a conflict, when there is a problem, the solution doesn't come by eliminating the conflict, by going against the actual conflict. The solution comes by placing the energy in the opposite force of the conflict, so naturally the conflict cannot sustain itself anymore. Okay? For example, if I don't want darkness, I cannot continuously put energy against darkness. What I need to put energy is to make light. It's only by generating light that I can eliminate darkness. I can stay my whole life criticizing darkness, saying that darkness is terrible, that I don't like darkness. I will only eliminate darkness by generating light. And it's very important for us to change a little bit our paradigm, because we have a tendency to go against the darkness, to go against the sickness, to go against the conflict, to go against the defilement, to go against the anger, against the ignorance, to go against the selfishness. When actually, the path works not by going against, but by going in favor, proactive, to generate that which by nature will eliminate the other. Okay, it's like light with darkness. It's like love with hatred. It's like wisdom with ignorance. So, the solution is not that of going against ignorance. The solution is that of generating wisdom. Okay? And this is one paradigm that we need to apply in many aspects of our lives. When there is a problem between we, ourselves, and someone else, the solution is not to eliminate the problem. The solution is to generate friendship, trust, whatever is necessary as an opposite to that conflict. Okay? Now, still, even though it's like this, it becomes very important to know where is the problem. Because if there is a conflict between myself and another person, and the conflict is coming because there is lack of trust, I can apply a lot of energy to have pleasurable moments together, but the conflict will not be eliminated. I am putting energy into something good, but I'm not solving the problem. Why? Because the antidote to the lack of trust is to develop trust. Is not to have pleasurable moments together. Having pleasurable moments together may help, but doesn't solve the problem. If we have conflict because there is no trust between each other, when we are having a moment of pleasure together, okay, and during that moment we don't feel the conflict anymore. But as long as it's gone, because the lack of trust is still there, the conflicts that come from the lack of trust will manifest again. So I need to understand that the conflict is coming from the lack of trust. Once I see it, then I need to apply energy into building up trust. So to see the fault, to see the sickness, to see the problem is fundamentally important. But the process of healing is in the opposite direction, is in the antidote, not in the problem itself. Okay? Now, another point which we touched yesterday, which is very important to understand everything that is coming after, is that our mind has a very particular characteristic. It's the total inability to have two direct opposite thoughts at the same time. Okay, we can have very quickly one after the other, but not together. So if we have any state of mind which is actually generating us conflict and suffering and so on, in order to eliminate it, we need to generate the direct opposite. Okay? For example, when we look about something, we see that the person in front of us, of our own self, we know that actually we are impermanent, but we appear to ourselves as being permanent, and we hold to ourselves as being permanent. Okay? Even though if we look at it, we know it's not. The antidote for holding at a permanent, it's not understanding that object, which person, situation, whatever, depends on causes and conditions. For example, if I look at a flower, and the flower appears to me as being permanent, and then I put my energy into reflecting and understanding that the flower depends on causes and conditions. What is interesting is that even though anything that depends on causes and conditions cannot be permanent, if anything depends on causes and conditions, inevitably it will be impermanent because it will transform. Knowing that it depends on causes and conditions is not a direct opposite to perceiving it as permanent. So it's not a direct antidote, it's an indirect antidote. So in the moment that I grasp at the flower as being permanent, in order to change that, I need to generate the mind that sees the flower as being impermanent, the direct opposite. It's not enough to see the flower as depending on causes and conditions. Okay? So, what is the root of our suffering? What is the main ignorance that generates all the conflicts that we have and everything else? Okay? It's the mind that grasps, that holds at reality, and by reality we mean everything that we perceive through our six senses, and even our own self that we also perceive. Okay? Everything appears to us, to our mind, as if it was of autonomous, independent, objective, so-called inherent existence. And we believe in it. We grasp at it, we hold at it as true. Okay? So the mind that holds at reality as if being of inherent existence, that's called the ignorance, that is the root of our suffering. Okay? Now, very often you may have listened to talk about emptiness, shunyata. All phenomena are of the nature of emptiness. And not so much maybe about interdependence. Okay? I talk often about interdependence, but in a most general sense, we listen a lot about emptiness, no? When we do the sadhanas, we don't say Om Sobhava Shuddha Sarva Dharma Sobhava Shuddha Hang, and we remember all phenomena are interdependent. We are saying all phenomena lack inherent existence, are free, empty of inherent existence. Everything dissolves into emptiness. We're always reminding ourselves of so-called emptiness, again and again and again and again. Why? There are two forms of minds, let's say like this, which any thought, it may be or an affirmative or an affirmation or a negation. Okay? So if I have a mind which is affirmative, the direct opposite is a negation. So our mind, our own ignorance, is it an affirmative mind or is it a negative mind, a negating? It's affirmative. It affirms that yes, it is of inherent existence. It exists as it appears of being an inherent existence. It holds as being of inherent existence. Okay? So let's try to imagine a little drawing, which I could make it myself, but we can imagine it also, no problem, like a diagram. Okay? On the top part, you imagine any object. Let's say the flower. Okay? Then we have on one side, we put it is. And then low, straight below, we put inherent existence, which means objective, autonomous, independent existence. Okay? So this is our ignorance. The flower is of inherent existence. Okay? The direct opposite mode of apprehension, the direct opposite mind, is the mind that says the flower is not of inherent existence. So the object is the same. The attribute is the same. The only difference between wisdom and ignorance is that ignorance says it is, wisdom says it is not. Related to the same. Okay? So we say the flower is of inherent existence as it appears. Wisdom would say the flower is not of inherent existence as it appears. It's empty of inherent existence as it appears. It's empty and it's not means the same. Okay? So this is the only direct opposite way to our own ignorance. Because if on one side we say the flower is of inherent existence, and on the other side we say the flower is interdependent, anything that is interdependent inevitably cannot be of inherent existence, but still is not a direct opposite. And our mind is tricky, and we are able to hold contradictions in our mind. So we are able to think at the same time, yes, the flower is of inherent existence, and the flower is interdependent. Even though it's completely cuckoo, we are able to put these two things together. But we are not able to put together the flower is of inherent existence and the flower is not of inherent existence. A direct opposite we are not able to do. Okay? So, when we talk about emptiness, it means to understand, to realize conceptually and later non-conceptually the opposite of our ignorance, which is that reality doesn't exist as it appears as being of inherent existence. Okay? Now here, there is a very important verse in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara from Shantideva, which says, Takpe ngola marek par, te ngome zin maying. Takpe ngola marek par, te ngome zin maying. Kan dro takpe ngola marek par, te ngome ba zin minuba. Without entering in contact with the designated object, is not possible to apprehend its known existence. Without entering in contact with the designated object, is not possible to apprehend its known existence. No, the example that I gave many times. If I ask you, is there an elephant in this room? Yes or no? What do you think? Is there an elephant or not? I'm not asking about the representation of an elephant. I'm not asking of a statue of an elephant. A statue of an elephant is there. Okay? I'm asking the actual animal. Okay? Is there an elephant here or not? No, right? Why can we say there is no elephant here? How can we be so sure there is no elephant here? Because we can imagine an elephant in here. Because we know what is an elephant, we can imagine an elephant. You know? First of all, where would the elephant come in through? Maybe that door, if both are open, the elephant could come in, you know? But I'm quite sure if there would be an elephant here, we would perceive it quite clearly. Right? The only reason why we can say there is no elephant here is because we are able to imagine the opposite. I can only say there is no elephant here because I can imagine what it would be if there would be an elephant here. Okay? Because if I ask you something, then you don't know really, you know, like, is Dharmakaya here? I heard this word sometimes, maybe yes, maybe no. What's the right answer? How can you say yes or no if we truly don't know what Dharmakaya is? Okay, Dharmakaya is supposed to be everywhere. Anyhow, another question. Dharmakaya is the very subtle mind of a Buddha, and it says that the mind is wherever it perceives anything. The mind is present wherever it perceives. So if I perceive the bell, my mind is present in the bell. So the mind of Buddha perceives all phenomena, so it's present everywhere. That's why Dharmakaya is present everywhere. But we can find another example. If I ask you, Kanla Chudru Chebelanchin, is there a Kanla Chudru Chebelanchin? Okay, another word, maybe a better example. Is there a Shiluma here? Yes or no? Why can't you answer if there is Shiluma? Because we don't know what Shiluma is, right? Okay, Shiluma is the Tibetan word for cockroach. Okay? I don't think there are cockroaches here, I hope at least. I haven't seen them. Okay, if I was in India, I would not be that sure. But the point is that we can only be sure of a negation when we can imagine the opposite, the affirmation. Okay? So if I come and I say, oh, the bell is empty. When I tell you the bell is empty, what do you understand? That the bell is missing something. But what? If I ask you, is the bell empty of air? You would say no. Is the bell empty of water? Yes. Okay? So whenever I say something lacks or something is empty, here we have three important parts. The object, the lacking itself, and what is lacking. Okay? So I have the basis of emptiness, which is in this case the bell. There is the lacking itself, it's empty. And then there is it's empty of what, which is the so-called object of negation. So whenever I say the bell is not, the bell is empty, we must ask ourselves, it's empty of what? Then I can make sure if it's true or not. Okay? So we have the basis, okay? The basis of emptiness, which in Tibetan is called tongshi. Shi means basis, tong means empty. The basis of emptiness, which we were using the example of the flower. Okay? There is the negation itself, which we call it's empty. Okay? And then we have what is called the object of negation. Is empty of what? So the bell is empty of water, is empty of milk, is empty of many things. But we can only say the bell is empty of milk, and we can only understand it because we know what is milk. We can imagine if there was milk inside. And then we can check, is there milk inside? No. Okay? So the first thing to understand a negation is to be able to imagine the opposite affirmation. That's the only way to understand the negation. Okay? So, the first step in order to realize the so-called true nature of reality, emptiness, okay, correct view of reality, is what is called in Tibetan Gakchang, which is said is called the recognizing the object of negation. Okay. So, to recognize the object of negation, first we need to see clearly ignorance. We need to see how ignorance functions. And then we can have the opposite. We can negate its mode of apprehension. So, what is the object of negation? Let's start with the ignorance that perceive reality as being permanent. Okay? So I listen to the sound. The sound appears to me as being permanent. I see a person. The person appears to me as being permanent, and I grasp at the person as being permanent. My ignorance is grasping at the person as being permanent, okay? But what is the object here? Is permanence, or is the permanence of the person, or is the appearance of permanence of the person? What do I grasp at? I grasp actually at the appearance. Okay? Because I look at you, you appear to me as being permanent, and I believe it's true. So I affirm that appearance as being real. I affirm the appearance of permanence to be actual. So I say, yes, you are permanent. I don't say, I just grasp at it as being true. Okay? So, in order to eliminate the mind that grasps at a person as being permanent, I need to generate the mind that grasps at the person as not being permanent. Okay? As being impermanent, which is the direct opposite. Here there is one very delicate part, okay, which is when generally explaining, we would say the object of negation is the permanence of the person. If the flower appears to me as being of inherent existence, and I grasp at it as being of inherent existence, I would say that the object of negation is the inherent existence of the flower. Okay? Actually, what we need to negate is not only the inherent existence of the flower, but it's mainly the appearance of inherent existence. We need to negate that appearance as being real, as being true. Because let's make one thing clear. Our main point here is to deal with our own ignorance. So we need to be able to see what is my ignorance affirming so that I can negate it. We need to find a way to recognize and to see our own grasping at inherent existence so we can negate our own grasping at inherent existence, not a general negation. I'm trying to make myself more clear. In the moment that I will meditate, okay, the flower lacks inherent existence. So I look at the flower, I reflect that the flower is interdependent. If the flower is interdependent, it cannot be of objective inherent existence. And then I meditate that the flower is of inherent existence. Beautiful. But I am not applying an antidote to my own ignorance yet. Okay? Because our ignorance that we need to apply an antidote, is it conceptual or is it spontaneous? Our problem is that we look at things and we say, oh yes, you are of inherent existence. Is our ignorance conceptual? Maybe at some levels, but mainly not. Our main issue is not a problem with conceptual grasping at inherent existence. We are not having this strong conceptual idea that reality is objective and so on. Actually, if we start analyzing, most of us, we understand and we accept that reality is subjective and so on. It's like when we look at a mirror and when we start analyzing, we know that what we see in the mirror is the reflection of the image of our face. Right? But yet it appears as being our face. So what's the ignorance here? That we grasp at the image that appears in the mirror as being our face. We look at it and we say, look at my face. We don't look at the mirror and say, oh, look at the reflection of the image of my face. Oh, there is a black dot at the reflection of the image of my face. We say, oh, I have something in my face. Look, there is something black in my face. Okay? So, the ignorance here is not that we grasp at the image in the mirror as being our face from a conceptual point. We are not saying to ourselves, oh, look, that is my face there. We know it's not conceptually. But yet it appears as such, and we grasp at such appearance as being real. So our ignorance is that we grasp at the appearance of permanence, of inherent existence, of the face in the mirror as being real. So the object of negation is not the general concept of inherent existence. It's the actual affirmation of our own ignorance, which is we grasp at the appearance as objective reality as being true. And it's not a general appearance. It's the appearance of each and every perception that we have. We look at the flower is there, I am here, I have nothing to do with it. The flower appears to me as if it exists in a total independent way, non-interdependent, and as it exists in a total inherent way as it is. It's like I asked yesterday, what is this color? We say it's red. Why it's red? Because it's red. It's inherently red. Don't ask me why. It's just like that. So it appears to us as if it exists independently of everything else. Okay? And we believe in such appearance. We grasp at such appearance. Okay? So, it's the appearance of inherent existence that needs to be negated as being true. And to do that, we must allow ourselves to see our own ignorance, to see not how we grasp at reality as being of inherent existence. And the first step on the path to realize the true nature of reality is being able to recognize our own grasping at inherent existence. Not the concept of the grasping at inherent existence, our own. Okay? It's clear the difference. Because what happens is that if we only reflect upon the general meaning of inherent existence, the general meaning of emptiness, of interdependence, and so on, and we do not observe our own grasping, how it appears to us, our own direct experience, we may meditate on emptiness as if we were watching a movie, something outside. As emptiness is there, the lack of inherent existence is there. We do it as a sort of intellectual game looking at things. When actually, what we need to deal with is our own grasping at inherent existence. It's not a general concept. I don't know if this is clear. We need to deal with our own grasping at permanence. Not with the fact that phenomena are impermanent. Okay, that's quite easy to get. What is difficult is that impermanent phenomena appear to me as if they were permanent, and I believe in it. I grasp at it, and that's what I need to deconstruct. That's what I need to change. That's what I need to oppose. Okay? So the process of realizing emptiness is divided basically into 3 parts, and the path to enlightenment is divided into 5. Okay? So the path to enlightenment is divided into what we call Tsoklam, Jorlam, Tonglam, Gomlam, Miloblam. Lam means path. So we have Tsoklam, the path of accumulation. Then after that we have Jorlam, the path of preparation. Then there is Tonglam, the path of seeing. Then there is Gomlam, the path of meditation or the path of familiarization. And then there is Miloblam, which is called the path of no more learning. Okay? Then we have other 3 steps in order to realize emptiness, which is called the wisdom of listening, the wisdom of comprehending, and the wisdom of meditating in relation to the true nature of reality. Okay? Let's put the 2 together. First of all, we enter the path of accumulation, which means we start walking on the path towards the state of Buddhahood when we wish to reach Buddhahood, when we desire to become a Buddha, when we have this urge to get out of samsara and to develop our qualities to their maximum potential to become a Buddha in order to help others. That's when we enter the Mahayana path, when we develop the so-called relative bodhichitta that we have talked before. Okay? That's when we enter the path, so-called path of accumulation. Then, inside the path of accumulation, we need to develop the 3 wisdoms. So first wisdom to realize emptiness is called the wisdom of listening. The wisdom of listening is basically we develop the wisdom of listening when we develop what is correct, was called a yichu, which is a correct assumption about the lack of inherent existence. An assumption is when we are sure about something, but we have had no direct experience and no logical reasoning about it. We heard, it makes some sense, we believe in it. We have no real logical understanding and no direct experience, but we trust it. Okay? That's what's called an assumption, a correct assumption. In Tibetan it's called yichu. No? The definition is nyoma dantayanda kanro lama tembe ranyita chikdongebe shenregi sheba. It's the mind that is certain about something without having had any direct experience about it or any valid reasoning about it. So, when do we actually develop the first level of wisdom regarding emptiness? When we are able to see the object of negation. We listen about all phenomena don't exist as it appears, as being of inherent existence, because everything is interdependent. And we listen about it in many different ways. Yesterday we talked a lot about it. Today we bring the subject again, and we read about it. We pass years of our lives listening about it. There is one point in which we are able to recognize the object of negation. We are able to see the grasping at inherent existence. Okay? And when we see it and we know it's the object of negation, we don't know yet exactly how we are going to have an opposite view. We don't know exactly why it doesn't truly exist. We have not a direct experience, but we know it's like that. Okay? The metaphor that Geshe Chekawa, which was one of my gurus, one of the gurus of Lama Michel Rinpoche, one of the most important contemporary masters of our past decades, he wrote a book, and in his book he put one example in which he says, you can only say that you know who is the thief, the robber, when you know the person, and you know that the person was stealing. Knowing the person doesn't make that you know who is the robber. I can know Devadatta very well, but if I do not associate Devadatta with stealing, I don't know who is the thief, right? The first level is when we know who is the thief, but we have not seen him robbing directly, and we don't have all the proofs to say why he stole, why he's the thief. But we know it, okay, out of all the informations that we received and so on. So at this point, it's a moment in which we develop this strong certainty that nothing exists in an autonomous, independent way. Everything exists as being interdependent. Everything exists as lacking so-called inherent existence, autonomous, objective existence. We know it. How? We are not so sure yet. Did we see it directly? No. When we get to this point, it means we have listened enough. We have completed the wisdom of listening. Listening means acquiring information. Okay? Reading, listening, and so on. So this is the first, is called the wisdom of listening. The second step after that is called the wisdom of comprehending. The first in Tibetan is called Töchung Gesherab, wisdom of listening. The second, the wisdom of comprehending, is called Samchung Gesherab. The wisdom of comprehending emptiness is the moment in which we have not yet had a direct experience, but through logical reasoning, we can arrive at what the technical term is inferential valid cognition. An inferential valid cognition, in Tibetan we say jepaksema, is when we are sure about something through a correct, a valid logical process. For example, I am sure that there is fire behind the mountain because I see smoke. And I know through direct experience that wherever there is smoke, there is fire. So I have my direct experience that wherever I see smoke, I know that I saw fire. And then I see the smoke coming from behind the mountain. I cannot see the fire, but I know there is fire. Why? Because I see smoke, and I know that wherever there is smoke, there is fire. That's a valid inferential cognition. Okay? Now, in this case, there are three main systems of logics for comprehending emptiness. We will explain one, which is called the king of all reasoning for realizing the true nature of reality, which is the following. The flower. Does the flower exist as it appears of being of inherent existence? No. Why? The flower is not of inherent existence. It's empty of inherent existence. Why? Because it's interdependent. Because it depends on causes and conditions. Because it depends on its own parts. Because it depends on the basis of imputation and the imputation of the name. Because it depends on the relation with the observer. So the first step to be able to understand this logical reasoning is to actually have clarity of the incompatibility between interdependence and inherent existence. But the only way to do that is we need to imagine how would something be if it was of inherent existence. So how would the flower be if the flower would exist objectively, independently, autonomously? What would happen to the flower? First, because the flower, if hypothetically speaking, if the flower would exist independently of everything else, it will never change. Because it doesn't interact. Okay? So if something do not depend on causes and conditions, it means that it does not interact. If it doesn't interact, it doesn't change. So the first point is that if it is of autonomous, independent, objective, inherent existence, first thing, it will not interact, so it will not change. Second, if the flower existed independently of its own parts, it means it cannot be divided. Okay, and that's absurd. It means it doesn't have parts. And most of all, if the flower would exist in an independent, autonomous way, inherently, it would appear in the same way to every one of us. It wouldn't be different to one or to the other. It would just be the same in different moments of our life and to different people. Okay? Now, think about the flower. Think about anything. And you say, does it appear to me as if existing independently of everything else? We're not talking about conceptual appearance. We're talking about spontaneous appearance as we see. Does it appear as existing independently of everything else? Yes, it appears in this way. We may know out of training that is not, but in the direct experience, it appears as such. Okay? Second, okay, it appears as if it exists autonomously, but is it true or not? Does the flower change? Does it interact? Is it impermanent? Yes. So if it's impermanent, it cannot be of inherent existence. Because it's changing. And if it would be of inherent existence as it appears, it will not interact, it will never change. Second thing, is the flower always the same? Or we perceive it in different ways and according to the observer it changes? Does everyone perceive it in the same way? No. So this means that the flower doesn't exist objectively as it appears because it's interdependent. We need to do a lot of training into reflecting again and again on the incompatibility between being of inherent existence and being interdependent. Okay? There are some beautiful texts that talk about this, like the 9th chapter of the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, like the discussion between wisdom and ignorance by Panchen Losang Chögyal Gyaltsen. There are many special texts which go through many, many, many examples of this. And what it shows to us is that if it's impermanent, it cannot be of inherent existence. And the ultimate conclusion is if it depends on something to exist as it exists, if it depends on its own causes and conditions, if it depends on its own parts, if it depends on the observer to exist as it exists, it cannot be of inherent existence. So, the flower appears as being of inherent existence. Is it right or wrong? Is it true or false? Apparently, from what I have heard, it's false. So I go to the wisdom of listening. The flower is not of inherent existence as it appears. But why? Because it is interdependent. It depends on cause and conditions. It depends why it's interdependent, because it depends on cause and conditions, because it depends on its own parts, because it depends on the basis of imputation and the imputation of the name. When I see the interdependence of the flower, and I understand clear that the flower being interdependent, it cannot be of inherent existence, I come to the conclusion the flower is not of inherent existence. And it's not a conclusion based on belief. It's not an assumption anymore. It's a certainty. We're not saying that a flower lacks inherent existence because someone told me. It's because I have my own reasoning. I have no any doubts about it. When we reach that level, this is called the wisdom of comprehending. It's still conceptual. Okay? We could make many examples of it. Okay, but makes too long. It's quite clear, right? The first level is we believe in it because we were told. The second level is we understand it deeply. Okay, and we understand by saying the flower or anything else. The flower appears to me as being of inherent existence. Is it true or is it false? Does it exist as it appears to me or not? I grasp at it as being true. Is it correct? Okay, apparently not. Why? So the flower is not of inherent existence because it is interdependent. But why is the flower interdependent? The flower, this goes up, the flower is interdependent because it depends on cause and conditions, because it depends on its own parts, because it depends on the basis of imputation and the imputation of the name, which means the relationship between object and observer. The flower doesn't exist independently of all of this. Yesterday we said, finally, what is a flower? It's a concept attributed to a unity of parts. Because when I look at the flower, and I call flower, and there is a little ant walking on it, do the two of us see it in the same way? One time I was giving this example in Brazil, and then there was one disciple who is a biologist. And then he looked and he said, yeah, okay, with two of us we look at it quite differently, I suppose, And then it's the value that we attribute, it's the characteristics and functions that we attribute to the object. So what is a flower? If each one of us start to describe a flower, do we have the same description? No. We think we are talking about the same thing, but actually we are not. Even though we all point the finger to the same object. ultimately, a flower, it's a name, it's a concept, and a name holds characteristics and functions. And it's a name that is attributed, is imputed at a collection of parts. And each part is again a unity, which is a concept which is built on the union of a collection of parts. So the point is the flower interdependent? Yes. Why? Because it depends on its own parts, depends on cause and conditions, and most of all because it depends on the imputation of the name, on the value attributed. The flower doesn't exist independently of the name attributed as flower. Okay, then we go back. Okay, so the flower is interdependent. Then we go one step backwards. If the flower is interdependent, then can it be of inherent existence? No, because I know that whatever is of inherent existence, whatever is interdependent, cannot be of inherent existence. So the flower lacks inherent existence, is empty of inherent existence. Why? Because it is interdependent. So my final conclusion is the flower is empty of inherent existence, lacks inherent existence, is not of inherent existence. It doesn't exist as it appears to me, as being of inherent existence. Why? Because it is interdependent. In Tibetan we will say, metok chochen, the flower, for instance, Dembar mete, it doesn't exist truly as it appears. Tendrelimbe chir. Why? Because it is interdependent. So the logical reasoning for emptiness, it says the object, like the flower, doesn't exist truly. What we mean when we say something doesn't truly exist, that it doesn't exist as it appears. We are not saying that it doesn't exist at all. We are simply saying it doesn't exist as it appears. So that's the object that we need to negate. Okay? So the flower doesn't exist as it appears as being of inherent existence. Why? Because it's interdependent. Why is it interdependent? The flower is interdependent because it depends on cause and conditions, it depends on its own parts, and it depends on the basis of imputation and the imputation of the name. And if anything is interdependent, it cannot be of inherent existence. Why? Because if something would be of inherent existence, it would never change. It will be the same for all and will be not divisible. Okay. This is the logic in debating, in dialectics. But we use it in our own process of understanding. So when we reach this, it's not a matter of debating actually. It's a matter of reasoning in which we recognize that the flower appears to me as being of inherent existence. Is this perception real or unreal? Is this perception correct or wrong? This perception is wrong. Why? Oh, because actually it depends on cause and conditions. It is interdependent. And if it is interdependent, it cannot be as it appears. It's like we are on a plane. I think everybody here has already gone on an airplane, right? We don't even need to go to a plane. Look to the other side of the lake. Do you see tiny, small houses? Does the houses appear to fit in the palm of your hand? Yes or no? Yes. Does the house actually fit in the palm of your hand? No. So, does the house exist as it appears, as being small, that it fits in the palm of your hand? No. Why? Because people can live in the house, because of the distance, it appears to me as being small, because actually it's big, because physical distance changes the perception of form, and blah, 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 blah. Okay? So we are not negating the existence of the house. We are negating the existence of the house as being small that fits in the palm of my hand. Similar to that, the reality around me appears to me as if it was independent, autonomous, objective, but actually it is not. Okay, and why is it not? Because it is interdependent. So this is the logical that we go through. Once we are able to go through this logic, and by understanding the incompatibility between interdependence and inherent existence, we are able to deconstruct the appearance. Okay? That's when we conclude the wisdom of comprehending emptiness. There is one very important thing here which I like just to put some small emphasis again. Sometimes it seems that we put a lot of emphasis in the emptiness and in the interdependence, and we forget to look carefully at the appearance of inherent existence. We need to be able to imagine very clearly the elephant to be able to negate it. We need to be able to see. So one of the important trainings that we can do is to observe the appearance and to truly, not just as a game, but to truly ask ourselves and to research and to analyze, does reality exist as it appears of being independent, objectively? Can it be like this? Maybe it's right. Is there anything that exists completely independently of everything else? In an autonomous, objective way? Our tendency is to say no, because we repeat so many times that it doesn't exist that we just say no. But we need to go and research ourselves, to make our own deep research. We need to go deeply and look, what about this? What about that? Okay? Once we are able to truly put together that if something is interdependent, it cannot be of inherent existence, and the reality appears to me as being of inherent existence, but actually it is interdependent, and by that we are able to deconstruct the grasping at inherent existence, that's when we conclude the wisdom of comprehending about emptiness. After this, we need to develop the third wisdom, which is called the wisdom of meditating on emptiness. Which basically, what we do is that we sit to meditate. This wisdom can only be generated in a meditative state. Okay? So we will sit on meditation, starting with breathing meditation. Then possibly we do the preliminaries, we generate the motivation, we request the blessings, just like the practice we are doing these mornings, okay? Then, at one point where our mind is calm and stable, we go first through an analytical meditation on emptiness, which means we observe any object. Today we are talking about the flower. So we observe the flower and we ask ourselves, does the flower exist in an inherent, independent, objective way or not? And we go through the whole reasoning, why not? Oh, because the flower actually is interdependent. How is the flower interdependent? Oh, it depends on cause and conditions. We imagine as if we need to convince someone else. Okay, so we go through the whole logical explanation of why the flower is interdependent. It's like if we go through the whole equation until we get to the conclusion the flower is interdependent. Good. Then, but the flower appears as being of inherent existence. Can the two coexist? No. So the flower is actually not of inherent existence as it appears. Why? Because it is interdependent. We go to the whole logic until it's very clear. We go to the conclusion. Very good. Once we complete this analytical meditation, we take the analytical mind and we put it aside. We keep it on the corner. It's there, but it's not fully aware. It's just on the corner. We go back to our breath. We observe an object, the flower, a sensation, our own mind, any object, okay? We observe the object and we allow the appearance of inherent existence to manifest without keeping control of it. We just allow our normal mode of perception to manifest. So we observe the object, and then we allow that object to appear to us as it normally does, as being of inherent existence. And then we allow our normal way of acting, of perceiving, that we start to grasp at it as being of inherent existence, as being true as it appears. And when we can see that actually the mind of grasping at inherent existence is appearing, the mind that grasps that appearance is actual true, that's when we take all the logical reasoning that we did before and we apply it back without needing to go through all the details, because we already got the conclusion. We just need to apply it. We have the antidote ready. We just need to apply it. So we say, oh, it appears as being of inherent existence, but actually it's not, because it's interdependent. And as we do, we deconstruct that grasping at inherent existence. We deconstruct the mind that grasps at that appearance as being real. And in the moment that we deconstruct it, we arrive to the conclusion, the flower, it's not of inherent existence. It's empty of inherent existence. And it is not as it appears. And when we get to that conclusion, we remain into that state in which we perceive the lack of inherent existence of the flower. We remain into this negation, into the opposite of the affirmation of ignorance. We remain into this state, it is not of inherent existence. And it's a bit, when we do it correctly, it's a bit shocking. It's a bit, wow, you know. And as we concentrate on the lack of inherent existence, it doesn't exist as it appears. In that moment, there is no more perception of the flower, of the reasoning. There is just the lack of inherent existence. It doesn't exist autonomously. It doesn't exist as it appears. And then we remain into that state with full concentration, without mental agitation, without mental laxity or dullness. And when we are able to stay in this full single-pointed concentration on the lack of inherent existence, which is not the concept of the lack of inherent existence, when we actually get to the conclusion that lacks inherent existence, and we go to that conclusion and remain into that state, single-pointed, without mental agitation, without other thoughts coming, without mental dullness, with inner clarity and strength. And this full concentration state brings a sensation of pleasure to body and mind, which means when we realize the so-called shamatha, single-pointed concentration, shine in Tibetan, calm abiding in English, which is when we generate this single-pointed concentration state on the actual lack of inherent existence, this is when we generate the so-called wisdom of realizing emptiness. Okay? Not the wisdom of realizing, mistake. The wisdom of meditating on emptiness. The wisdom of meditation. This is when we realize the wisdom of meditation. So we have the wisdom of listening, correct assumption, the wisdom of comprehending, logical certainty, when we have an inner certainty, and then the wisdom of meditating, when we are able to reach the conclusion of the lack of inherent existence and rest our mind into it in a perfect concentration state, in perfect samadhi. This is what is called the wisdom of meditating. Then, next step, I'm not going to go into many details, we just go through the next steps. Please.
It's possible to have the experience of the wisdom of meditation without the wisdom of
Comprehending.
And not why.
When we meditate, in meditation, there must be an object of meditation. The object of meditation is basically where our mind is placed. So to meditate on something, we must be able to induce our mind to that state. So in order to be able to meditate on the lack of inherent existence, we must induce our mind to the perception of the lack of inherent existence. Without that, we cannot meditate on the lack of inherent existence. Okay? So to say, in order to meditate on love, I must induce myself to a state of love. In order to meditate on the lack of inherent existence, on emptiness, I must induce my mind on the experience of understanding at least emptiness. Okay? And I must direct my mind to see the lack of inherent existence in order to familiarize my mind with it. So, the question that comes actually is it possible to induce oneself or to experience the perception of the lack of inherent existence without having any comprehension prior to that of the lack of inherent existence? Okay? That's a long debate that many traditions have been debating between. Okay? According to Gelugpa tradition, Lama Tsongkhapa's explanation, he says that actually not. In order for us to perceive something, we must be able to understand it, we must be able to direct our mind to it. The only alternative would be to have such a profound familiarization with the lack of inherent existence, with emptiness from many other lives, that we do not remember, but then when some small conditions come, it's just like putting water to make a previous understanding to manifest. Okay? So is it possible in this lifetime to have a understanding on emptiness, to be able to get to the lack of inherent existence, to see emptiness, without going through the whole logical reasoning and so on? The only possibility, from my understanding, would be if in the past we have had such experiences that we have a profound imprint, a profound predisposition, that we don't need to go through the whole process. It's enough one word. It's enough just something that we reconnect to it. But even in this case, this is possible because in the past that we don't remember, on another moment, we went through the process of understanding and comprehending. So basically the answer is, in Italian we would say ni. Okay? Which would be yes and no. Because basically, right now in the present, if we have a very, very strong and profound imprint of the understanding and realization of emptiness, for example, someone that in one lifetime had direct experience of emptiness, had a direct realization of emptiness, and so on, and then is reborn. This person comes with a very, very, very strong imprint of the understanding of the lack of inherent existence, which is beyond words. And this person may not need the logical explanation. may be enough one day to see something and connect to it. Okay? I make one example. There is one master from a non-Buddhist tradition, Hindu tradition. And I heard him telling his own life story. And one time he told that when he was small, he was I think 6 or 11 or 12, something like that. He was quite small, I don't remember the precise age. He was going to school and his mother told him, "You must listen very carefully what the teacher says." He said, okay. So he was in class, and as the teacher was speaking, he started to listen well what the teacher was saying. He said, I must understand clearly what the teacher is saying. So he starts to observe, and then he understood that actually he didn't know what the teacher was saying. He only knew what he was understanding himself. And then he remained like in this absorbed state, trying to see what actually the teacher was saying, because anything that he was understanding was only his understanding of what the teacher was saying, was not what the actually teacher was saying. And he got to the certain conclusion that actually it's not possible to know what the teacher was saying somehow, no? And he was in this absorbed state, like sort of samadhi. And then the teacher looked at him and said, "Wake up, what are you doing?" And then he came and he was like this, and the teacher said, "I don't know who you are. Or you are an emanation of a god, or you are an emanation of the devil, and most probably you are the second." No? And then he got even into more shock, because what the teacher said made him to make a question, and what am I? So he got out of the classroom, and he starts to make this question to himself, what am I? And he saw clearly that himself didn't exist as it appeared. He was not understanding who he was, because he didn't exist independently of its own perception and imputation, and he entered into this sort of trance of trying to understand who he was, of this realization of the lack of inherent existence of the self, actually. And he stayed in this trance for around 12 days. No eating, no sleeping, just there like this. And when he woke up, he had many people. He was in India. So many, if it was here, the parents would have taken to the psychiatric and the hospital and who knows what, no? So in India, what happened is that when he woke up from this trance, there were many people around with offerings, making pujas, asking for blessings, and all this type of things, So, for me, when I heard that story, it's a clear sign of a person that had such a deep, strong imprint coming from the past, that it's enough. 1, 2 small things, like one drop of water is enough to make that seed to manifest. Okay? In this case, it's possible. In this case, it's possible to experience and to realize emptiness without going through the logical understanding. Okay? But what is explained is that this person in the past, in another moment, at some point, in order to get that experience, needed to go through the logical understanding. Okay? How do we know if we have a strong imprint to meditate on emptiness? This is explained in the text of Chandrakirti. Now, the precise words I don't remember myself. I could take the book, but anyhow. He says something that, when do we know if we or someone has strong imprints that will support us to meditate and realize an emptiness? When, by listening, that phenomena lack inherent existence, by listening about interdependence, it gives us spontaneous joy, it gives us really joy, it amuses us. When we feel emotioned, when talking about emptiness, we feel like crying, we feel tears coming out of our eyes, and we have goose pics. These are signs that we have a strong imprint on the correct view of reality. Okay? If there is no imprint, we listen about the correct view of reality, these people are crazy. What's the point about all of that, you know? We don't connect to it. Okay? So, the point finally is that if we have a very profound imprint from previous lives, or from this life that we don't remember, but most probably from previous lives, on meditating on emptiness, going through the process of the wisdom of listening and the wisdom of comprehending becomes much more easy. But I still advise that we go through that process. Okay? There are some traditions that try to make people to go through a sort of shocking experience in order to reach the conclusion of the lack of inherent existence. This is in our tradition, we don't do in that way. Okay? So, when we are able to meditate, now the next steps I will just explain briefly for us to know what are the steps. Because one very important thing is that we have seen that it's possible to develop actual bodhichitta. And if we put our effort in the right steps, we can make it. If I ask you, can you develop in this lifetime the wisdom of listening about emptiness? I would say yes. Okay, then can you trust yourself that you can actually get the wisdom of comprehending emptiness? We can. It takes effort. It takes time. It's not obvious, but it's possible. Then, can we actually be able to meditate on emptiness? Why not? We need to develop first concentration. We need to be able to have our mind focused and all of that, but it's possible. So, for us to know what are the next steps. Once having a full, single-pointed samadhi concentration on emptiness, a small part of the mind detaches from the single-pointed concentration and start analyzing. Okay, but why is it empty of inherent existence? It goes back to the analysis. Okay? The metaphor that is given by Panchen Losang Chogi Gyaltsen in the root of Mahamudra, it is like one lake with very transparent water, where the stable lake is the mind that is single-pointed concentrated. Then there is a small fish that starts swimming around the lake, very gently, without making the water on the surface to move. That's the part of the mind that starts to analyze. Okay, yes, it's empty of inherent existence. Why? It goes back to interdependence. It goes back to the analysis, to the reasoning. When we have these two states together, we lose that pleasure and that it's coming from the single-pointed concentration because it requires extra effort. It's not spontaneous. When we are able to be single-pointed concentrated on the lack of inherent existence, and at the same time, one part of the mind is analyzing the lack of inherent existence. And this too is happening without distraction, without mental dullness, with full concentration, and this brings a state of pleasure to body and mind. This is what is called the realization of vipassana, or in Tibetan we call Haktong, the profound view on emptiness. When this state is reached, it's what is called entering into the path of preparation. Okay? So, once the person enters into the path of preparation, by going again and again into the state of samadhi, of single-pointed concentration with analysis, so-called vipassana or haktong, what happens gradually is that the distance between the actual experience of the lack of inherent existence and the conceptual understanding becomes lesser. Because at this point, we are not meditating on the actual lack of inherent existence. The object of meditation is not the actual lack of inherent existence. It's the concept of the lack of inherent existence still. It's the general meaning of the lack of inherent existence, so-called in Tibetan tunchi. Okay, so it's still a conceptual process. It's like we went through a process, we reach a conclusion, we stay in that conclusion. But it's still a conceptual process. When staying in that meditation for longer and longer time, there are 4 levels. Gradually, the experience will become less and less conceptual. It's like if the direct experience and the conceptual starts to get more near to each other until they completely mix together. When this happens is when the conceptual understanding becomes a non-conceptual direct experience, which is called a valid direct cognition. Okay? And in this moment, it's when we call entering the path of seeing or having the actual realization of emptiness. I make one metaphor. Let's say that we go to the movies. Okay? And we have the projection of a whole story in front of us. Many actors, many things happening, and so on. Okay? It appears as being real people. And we believe it's real people. Okay? Not only we believe it's real people, we generate attraction, aversion, fear, attachment. Right? At one point, someone starts saying to us, look, come on, this is just light projected into one white screen. There are no real people there. I say, come on, that's not possible. I have been seeing them for such a long time. No, they are not. Haven't you seen that they have not aged in such a long time? Haven't you seen that you come here again and again to watch this story and you have, they're always doing exactly the same thing? And you say, yeah, I thought they were good actors, But, okay, maybe you were right. And we start analyzing until we can see clearly, understand clearly that they are not real people. This is just images appearing. They are not real people there. They appear to me as real people, but they are not. We believe in what we were told, and then we understand the whole logics. We are shown that there is light going, and we understand the process of projection, and we say, that's just a projection. They appear as real people, but actually they are not. And then we get sure about it, and we can stay fully concentrated on it. We can see it clearly. And when we are meditating on it, we deconstruct the grasping at it as being real people. But one day, as we go through this process, we get more and more and more near. Until one day we go and we look at the screen and we physically can see, wow, there is just a tiny screen, and we see the light projecting coming from the opposite direction. So we have a direct experience that these are not real people, it's just light projecting on a screen. Okay? This direct experience is similar as when meditating, the practitioner have a direct, non-conceptual experience of the lack of inherent existence. It's something which goes way, way beyond words. It's something that cannot be understood and explained through logics. It's something that cannot be put into words. It is said that it's similar to trying to explain the direct experience of realizing emptiness is like a deaf and dumb person trying to explain the sensation inside the dream. Okay, but we didn't even need to go to that. Try to explain to someone what is to feel love. Try to explain to someone how it is to eat chocolate. Someone that have never ever eaten chocolate. Make it more complicated. Chocolate ice cream. You know, there was one very special Tibetan scholar. He went to India in the early times, and he wrote a diary of his travels. Gendun Chöpel was his name. And in one of his diaries, he explains to Tibetans what is a mango. You know? And he tries to describe the taste of mango. And he says, you know, is this fruit, has this type of shape, like this, that texture, and the taste is like fresh yogurt with a lot of sugar. I don't think it has nothing to do with fresh yogurt, but, you know, he was trying to find a way to say what is to eat a mango. But what's the only way of knowing what's the taste of mango? By eating one. Okay? So, there is two ways of experiencing. There is conceptual understanding, and then there is direct sensory experience, which goes way beyond words, because words are concepts. And when the practitioner has a direct experience on the lack of inherent existence, it's very shocking, because it deconstructs completely the normal way of perceiving reality. In that moment, it's not possible to perceive anything else, because we are not capable yet to put together existence and not being as it appears. We cannot put the two things together. Conceptually, maybe yes, but not in a direct experience way. So it's similar to a total blackout. Basically, it's like there is no other perception than this lack of inherent existence, that it doesn't exist as it appears. And that's the only perception that remains in that moment. That's why in the Heart Sutra, there is this part which says, there is no eye, no ear, no nose, no this, no that, no everything, no? The Muslims used to make a joke in Tibet, saying, oh, you make things so complicated, you know, you say there is no eye, no ear, no tongue, why don't you say there is no head, you know? It will make things just much more simple. Anyhow, why we say in the Heart Sutra there is no this, no that, no that, no that, and no so many things. In the direct experience of the realization of emptiness, there is nothing to the perception of the practitioner other than the lack of inherent existence itself. There is nothing more within the perception. Okay? It's such a shock in a way. There is nothing else within the perception. Just this total lack of inherent existence. It's like we deconstruct the normal way of perceiving reality, and then we don't have anything to substitute it somehow. It's just like some sort of shock. Okay? Then, this is what we call the direct realization of emptiness. Within this state of mind, I repeat, there is no any other object of perception. There is no sensation of which we can be aware. There is no form, no shape, no smell, no taste, no any objects of the five senses. There is only the lack of inherent existence. When one stays into this meditative state, it's called the path of seeing. When the practitioner gets out of the meditative state, sort of awakening from a sleep almost, like awaken from this meditative state. It's like you went near to the screen and you saw the light coming from the opposite direction. And then you have this shock because you believed for such a long time that these were real people, and now you see the light coming and the very thin screen there. And then after these direct shocking experiences, it's finished. You go back and sit again on the opposite side, and you still see the projection in the screen. And it still appears as people, but you know that they are not. And it's not, you don't know that they are not because of logics. You know that they are not because you saw it yourself. You had a direct experience. Okay? So it is said that when the meditator, when the practitioner has a direct experience of emptiness, one of the signs that it was an actual direct experience of emptiness is that when the person is not anymore in this meditative state, the practitioner will see everything. It still appears as being of inherent existence, but spontaneously the practitioner knows it's not. The practitioner doesn't grasp anymore as it was of inherent existence. And what's one of the best consequences of that? There is no more anger, no more jealousy, no more fear, no more attachment. All our mental defilements do not have anymore a solid ground on which to stand. Okay? So sometimes I saw people saying, oh, I think I had a direct experience of emptiness. And I said, okay, let's see. Do you still get angry? Yes. Okay, no, didn't go well. Try again. Now, simple as that. We don't need to go to many other things, okay? Because when there is a true, direct, non-conceptual experience of the lack of inherent existence, after that moment on, the mind that grasps at reality as being of inherent existence cannot sustain anymore, cannot exist anymore, because there is a direct experience. It's like after you have seen the light being projected in the screen, even though it appears as people, you know they are not people. There is no way to believe they are real people anymore. Okay? So, when the practitioner reaches the path of seeing, this is when the practitioner gets out of samsara. This is the moment in which the ignorance of grasping at inherent existence, it's overcome. Okay, the direct, non-conceptual, deep, profound experience of the lack of inherent existence is the direct antidote at the grasping of inherent existence. So once this experience becomes true, then the mind that grasps at inherent existence is not able to appear again. So there is no more ignorance, but there is still the imprint of ignorance. One of the metaphors is like we take away all the garlic from a storeroom, but the smell is still there. Now we need to take away the smell. So the ignorance itself is what is called in Tibetan nyunchip, which is translated as the obstruction of defilements. In many different places you may have read or listened about the two obstructions, okay, to reach enlightenment. The first obstruction is called nyunchip, the second is called shetrip. It's the obstruction of defilements and the obstruction to knowledge, the obstruction to omniscience. So the first obstruction is overcome when realizing the path of seeing. As soon as the meditator, the practitioner goes out of the meditative state, he enters naturally the path of familiarization or the path of meditation, gomlam, okay? Which from all the 5 paths is the longest of all. Okay? So, after that, the meditator still phenomena, reality, still appear as being of inherent existence. And that appearance is what is called the imprint of ignorance. Okay, it's not ignorance itself. Ignorance itself is grasping at such appearance as real. The appearance itself is the imprint of the ignorance. Then after that, the practitioner would go again and again and again and again into this deep, non-conceptual experience on the lack of inherent existence. And gradually, the strength of the appearance will come lesser and lesser and lesser. Okay? Here, if we go into details, it's very much detailed, explaining all the different levels of this, okay, which are called the 10 bhumis, the 10 stages, okay? The first bhumi is in the path of seeing. The entering the path of meditation is entering into the second bhumi, okay? And then we have this bhumi of stages. And then all the other bhumis are inside the path of meditation, which is basically familiarizing oneself again and again with the direct experience so that the appearance becomes weaker and weaker. Making it, oversimplifying it a bit, but making it simple. There is a moment in which there is no more appearance of inherent existence. Sure, no more grasping, but when there is no more appearance of inherent existence, and yet reality does exist, when the person is able to go beyond the duality in which we live of objective existence and not being of objective existence, of inherent existence and emptiness, in other words, the duality of appearance, how things exist, the names and so on, and not existing in an independent, objective way. When we transcend this duality, it is the moment in which there is no more grasping at inherent existence, there is no more appearance of inherent existence, but yet everything exists. That's the so-called the path of no more learning. That's the state of Buddhahood. That's the state of enlightenment, of full awakening. If we use a metaphor, it's like this. Right now, we are asleep, and we are dreaming, but we don't know it's a dream. So we react to our dreams with fear, with anger, with attachment, because we don't know it's real. When we are dreaming, do we react to our dreams? Do they appear as real? Yes. What happens if suddenly in the middle of our dream we understand that actually it's a dream? We do not react anymore in the same way. I had, when I was a child, a very strong experience of this. I had a dream that I came down from my bed, the room where I was sleeping in my father's house. Just after the door, there was the staircase going down, and there was like a small barrier which you could see one floor down, no? Where the staircase was going around. So I had a dream that I came down from my bed and I jumped there down. And actually it's one floor, but the sensation was that it was very long. And then I felt afraid. And then when I was about to touch the ground, I woke up. Then I think I was maybe 6 or 8, something like that. And then I had this thought, oh, it was just a dream. Let's do it again. That's fun. So I fell asleep again, and then I did it with full awareness that it was just a dream. I went there happily, and I jumped, and then almost touched, I wake up again. Let's do again. I repeated 3-4 times until I got bored, and I didn't do it again. So the point was that actually this was one of my most strong experiences of this awareness of dreaming. And once we have the awareness, we do not grasp at the appearance as being real. So we don't need to react with fear or attachment because we know it's just a dream. Okay? So, until we don't have a direct experience of emptiness, and everything appears to us as being of inherent existence, and we believe that such appearance is real, it's like dreaming without knowing that we are dreaming. When we have a direct experience of the lack of inherent existence, and then reality appears to us as being of inherent existence, but we know it's not, it's like dreaming, being aware that it's a dream. When there is no more appearance of inherent existence, it's like waking up. That's why we call Buddha the awakened one. The state of awakening. Okay? It comes from this metaphor, this word, this way of saying. Okay? So with this, we have the 5 path of accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation, and no more learning. So, what I want to bring to all of us here is at least for us to have a general idea that there is a path to follow. There are steps to follow. And the most important thing is not to see if we can follow the last steps, is to see if the first step is reachable or not. That's the first thing. And it is. Okay? Now, let's go back to the text. It will be easy to look the text now after everything we went through, okay? Tempa topne sangwa ten chona mila tabur sama ke rikpe shila che nyembo niken ransa dro lamge ngowo kunshin ala sha tunsam gyume kiburcha. When stability have been attained, which means when we have developed compassion and love towards oneself and others, impart the secret teaching. The secret teaching is the understanding on the lack of inherent existence, the correct view of reality. Chonam milatabursam, consider all phenomena as dreams, which means consider everything that you perceive as not existing as it appears. Remember that not existing as it appears doesn't mean not existing. Okay? The image in the mirror does not exist as an actual face, but this doesn't mean that the image doesn't exist. Okay? The sound that we listen does exist, but it doesn't exist independently of causes, conditions, its parts, and the relation between observer and object of perception. Okay? So, it is an illusion. What is an illusion? What is the illusory aspect of the sound that we listen? That it appears as being of an autonomous, independent reality when actually it is not. Okay? So just to make clear, to say that everything is like a dream, we are not saying that everything do not exist. To say that everything has an illusory aspect doesn't mean that everything is an actual illusion. We're saying see everything as an illusion. We're not saying that everything is an illusion. There is a difference here. Huh? So what is the illusory aspect of everything that we perceive, objects of attraction, aversion, anything? It appears to us as being of inherent existence, when actually it is not. Okay? Now, so the first level of understanding is observing external phenomena. We observe sound, we observe shape, we observe people, we observe situation, we observe external phenomena. Second level, examine the nature of unborn awareness. Makirikpe shilache. Makirikpe shilache, it means to observe the nature of one's own mind. Okay, that's a bit more difficult to understand. Because when we start looking, is there any phenomena that exists in an independent way, objectively? And one of the tendencies is for us to go, actually the mind, because the mind is the creator of reality, we may say. Oh, so the mind exists out of its own characteristics? No. Okay? The mind is also interdependent. Our mind is the result of such a complex relation of parts. You know? From what I understood, and doctor, tell me if I am wrong, in our modern science of psychiatry and so on, we still have a lot of difficulty even to give a clear definition of what is a mind. Correct? Okay? So, it's not something easy to observe and analyze the mind. But first step, we don't know what is a mind. So here what we need to observe, the observer. Okay? To go through this in a more detailed way, anyone who is truly interested into meditating on the lack of inherent existence of the mind, I advise you to go through one practice and one text, one teaching, which is called The Root of Mahamudra by Panchen Losang Chogi Gyaltsen. There are commentaries. I gave the commentary once. We still have it online. Geshe Tupten Trinle gave the full transmission and commentary here. I gave after one explanation on it. Then on this teaching, which one day we can go again through it, it is explained first how to recognize one's own mind, how to see one's own mind. Second, how the mind appears as being of inherent existence. Third, how to negate such appearance. And so to meditate on the lack of inherent existence of the mind. Okay? But we're not opening this subject now. Okay? The point here is that I had one wrong understanding for some time, which I stayed 2-3 years trying to find an answer. And my question was, if everything exists independent of the basis of imputation and the imputation of the name, no? If nothing exists independently of this relation between object of perception and observer, what happens to the mind? If my mind doesn't exist independently of the imputation of the name, who is imputing the name on the mind? Okay, let's say that we have a self-awareness mind that observes the mind itself. And then, does that mind that observes the mind exist? Yes, so it also needs a mind to perceive it. And like this we go to infinite. We go to a way which is not feasible. It means that we always need one mind that perceives the mind, that perceives the mind, that perceives the mind, that perceives the mind, and we go way back to infinite. Okay? So this is not working. It doesn't fit. And I made this question to one of my gurus in Tibet when I was studying. And the first time he didn't give me a precise answer. He said, yeah, it's difficult. He said, one day you'll understand. Okay, thank you. Then 2 years after, when receiving teachings from him, he was giving me the commentary of Lama Tsongkhapa, explaining me the commentary of Lama Tsongkhapa on the correct view of reality, which is called Umagompa Rapsel. Then there is one chapter on this commentary, which is talking about the self-awareness. Okay? And there I understood something, which I hope is a correct understanding, but it's my own understanding, which made a lot of sense to me, which is when we say that nothing exists independently of the imputation of the name, doesn't mean that everything to exist needs to have someone that is perceiving it. I explain myself better. When I listen to sound, the sound that I listen only exists in dependence of the mind that perceives it. Okay? The mind that perceives the sound doesn't need another mind to perceive itself in order to exist. It needs an object of perception to exist. What creates reality is not having someone that is perceiving the object. In other words, the observer doesn't need another observer to exist. It needs an object of perception. It's like here and there. Here needs there to exist as here. There needs here. It's like big and small. The big, in order to exist, needs a small, and a small, in order to exist, needs a big. But the small doesn't exist independently of the big, and the big doesn't exist independently of the small. They are mutually dependent. The mind that perceives reality doesn't exist without the reality that it perceives, while the reality that is perceived doesn't exist without the mind that perceives it. They are mutually dependent. Okay? So when we go to look at the emptiness of the mind, we need first to observe how the mind appears as being of inherent existence. The mind appears as being of inherent existence, at least that's how I perceive it, as if it existed independently of any object of perception. The mind is here, reality is there. It doesn't depend on anything else. It's there autonomously, independently. But actually, the mind that perceives the sound doesn't exist independently of the sound. So the mind that perceives the sound, it's not of inherent existence. Doesn't exist in an autonomous, independent way as it appears to me. It's always important to go to look what is the illusory appearance. External objects appear to us as if they exist independently of everything else, and the mind also appears as if it exists independently of everything else. Especially independently of the object of perception. Okay? So, the point here is that when we say the emptiness of the mind, it's first recognizing that the mind appears as existing in an independent way of everything else, but actually it does not, because the mind is also interdependent.
But there is a problem here.
Yes.
You understand all this. Something is happening. You see all the picture.
Yes.
You see all the picture. Who is seeing all the picture? It's not a regression at infinitum. It's simply that there is the experience you are describing.
Yes.
So who is the last terminal of this knowing, let's say? Who is saying all this?
The question is that, is there a last terminal? Okay. From my understanding, we have the tendency, as we go along the path, to look for something that actually exists. Okay? It is a sort of natural need that we have. Okay? And in all the centuries that all these debates and has been going on, very often, according to history, we have gone again and again to the need to look for something that actually is there, beyond the observer, beyond this state. What is actually there? But behind what is there? Ultimately, there must be something. Okay? There must be a mind that sees everything and puts everything together. There must be something that actually do exist somewhere. And what I understood from Buddha's teachings is that actually there is not. You know, the only absolute reality is the lack of absolute reality. The only ultimate truth is the lack of ultimate truth. So, there is no such things as how to say, but something that, but actually deeply, deeply, deeply inside what is there. Deeply, deeply, deeply inside what is there? Nothing. Because we are looking for something that exists in an autonomous way. And the only way of existing is through interdependence. There is no other way of existing. There is no way of existing that is not interdependent. There is no mind that can exist without having an object of perception. The nature of mind is to perceive. So there is no any state of mind that can exist without having an object of perception. So, if we want to look for a sort of primordial mind that exists behind it all, which does not depend on something else to exist, that's not possible, because it's in the nature of mind itself to perceive. The mind must have an object of perception in order to exist. Okay? Yes, right. In the difficulty of meditating on the emptiness of the mind, it's because you are observing your own self, basically. No? So that's why the longest part of the process is learning how to see the mind. And it's quite complex, actually. Here, this text, it's very beautiful where Panchen Losang gets and explained. This is what's called the Mahamudra. It's the meditation on the emptiness of the mind. No? So, when it comes to the conclusion, it's always the total lack of inherent existence. The direct experience of emptiness, it doesn't matter on what object it is. It doesn't matter if the practitioner is meditating on the emptiness of the glass, of the water, or the flower, of sensation, or of the mind itself. The final experience is the same. It's the simple lack of inherent existence. Let's say the shock, oh, it doesn't exist as it appears, remains the same. The important thing here, for me, the key, is not the emptiness. The key is the appearance. How does the mind appear to the observer, to ourselves? How does the self appear to ourselves? It appears as being of independent existence. I don't know for you, but when I observe my mind, it looks like something that is there, that has nothing to do with the rest. Okay? And that's what we need to deconstruct. That's what we need to change. Okay? Then, there is another point which we may come to, because the first point is that when we observe that reality doesn't exist independently of the observer and so on, there is the danger of entering into the view that the mind exists independently of the rest and is the creator of reality. Okay? Then we need to see, okay, the mind appears as being of inherent existence, but actually it's not. But then there is still another danger of believing that emptiness itself exists independently of everything else. That's why we go to the next line, which says, the remedy itself is released in its own place. Nyembo nikyang rangsar chul. The remedy itself, the antidote itself, nyembo, nikyang itself, rangsar chul. It liberates itself from within its own place. Which means emptiness is empty of inherent existence. Okay? Understanding that actually even emptiness, which is the lack of inherent existence, doesn't exist in an autonomous, independent, objective way. That's even more difficult to grasp at. Okay? But let's make let's touch it not go too deep, just in the surface a little bit. Let's look at the interdependence of emptiness. Okay? Okay, the first level of interdependence doesn't exist because emptiness is permanent. Okay? Definition of emptiness. Gakcha kaktsam gimega. The definition of emptiness is Gakcha kaktsam gimega, the known affirmative negation of the object of negation. Okay? The known affirmative negation of what? Of inherent existence, of the object of negation. Okay? What is a known affirmative negation? Here there is a long debate from different philosophical schools in Buddhism if emptiness is an affirmative negation or a known affirmative negation. Okay, according to Lama Tsongkhapa, is a known affirmative negation. If I say, I will not eat now, it's an affirmative negation, because what am I affirming through my negation? That another moment I will eat. I won't eat now. It means at some moment I will eat. So it's a negation that brings automatically the consequence of an affirmation. Okay? A known affirmative negation, it is that I don't eat. Full stop. I am not eating. I am not bringing any affirmation out of it. It's just a simple negation. It doesn't bring automatically any other affirmation. So some scholars and meditators in the centuries that went through Buddhism, they say that emptiness is an affirmative negation, because by negating inherent existence, you come to the conclusion of the true nature of reality. There is something that comes out of it. Lama Tsongkhapa says, no way. Okay, there are long debates about this, very difficult to understand. But Lama Tsongkhapa says, no. The true nature of reality is the lack of inherent existence itself. It doesn't generate any other new experience or perception. It's by itself. So it's a known affirmative negation of what? Of the lack of inherent existence, as it appears. Now, what are the parts that compose emptiness? To understand this, let's see the general meaning of chair. Okay, when we debate, we learn the general meaning of a bumpa, a vase. Okay, there is a whole definition of bumpa, but let's take a chair. What is a chair? The chair is a physical object that can stand alone, on which you can sit and can hold your weight. Okay? Just finding whatever definition of chairs. Okay, does the chair exist? Yes. But for the general concept of chair to exist, it depends on the specific general concepts of specific chairs. There is the blue chair, there is the red chair, there is the big chair, there is the small chair, there is the chair with 4 legs, there is the chair with 6 legs, there is the chair with 1 big leg. There's all forms of chair. But the concept chair only exists because there are all the different types of chairs. If all the different types of chairs didn't exist, a chair would not exist. I don't know if it's clear, this. Okay? Let's say we create a group and we give us a name. We are the followers of Mickey Mouse. Okay? And Minnie. So what happened is that we become the followers of Mickey and Minnie. The follower of Mickey and Minnie only exists because there are specific followers of Mickey and Minnie. If there is no more any specific follower of Mickey and Minnie, the follower of Mickey and Minnie doesn't exist anymore. Okay? I don't know if it's clear. The concept chair only exists because there are so many specific chairs. Emptiness only exists because there is the emptiness of sound, the emptiness of the chair, the emptiness of this, the emptiness of the mind, the emptiness of this and that objects. So the emptiness of each and every specific objects are the parts that compose the general concept of emptiness. I don't know if this is clear, okay? So even emptiness doesn't exist as something there, independent. Emptiness exists in dependence of what? Of the specific emptiness of each and every object. More than that. This means that a general emptiness doesn't exist. What exists actually is the specific emptiness of each object. To be more precise, the general emptiness doesn't exist independently of the specific emptiness of each object. The emptiness of sound doesn't exist without the existence of sound. If I say the singing bowl, the bell, it's empty of milk. The emptiness of milk of the singing bowl can only exist because the singing bowl exists. Okay? If the glass doesn't exist, the lack of milk in the glass cannot exist. The lack of milk in the glass can only exist independent of the existence of the glass. Okay? Now, the glass appears as being of inherent existence, but actually it is not. Okay? But yet the glass exists. Okay? It exists in which way? In an interdependent way, depending on causes, on conditions, on parts, on the imputation of the name, and so on. So, why the glass doesn't exist inherently? Because it is interdependent. Okay? Why is the glass interdependent? Because it lacks inherent existence. Because it's empty of inherent existence. If the glass would be of inherent existence, as it appears, it could not be interdependent. And as it is interdependent, it cannot be of inherent existence. The two are of the same nature. Okay? So what happened here is that the emptiness of the glass can only exist because the glass exists as an interdependent phenomenon. The emptiness of the glass could never exist if the glass, as an interdependent phenomena, didn't exist. Okay? It's like, does the emptiness of an elephant with 16 legs exist? Can we perceive the emptiness of the 16-legged elephant? Or even more simple, can we meditate on the lack, can we perceive the emptiness of the elephant that is in the Gompa here? No. Why not? Because there is no elephant here. We can meditate on the emptiness of the image of the elephant here, which is not an elephant, it's a mental image. I can meditate on the emptiness of the image, the mental image of a 16-legged elephant. But I can never realize the emptiness of a 16-legged elephant if it cannot be perceived, if it doesn't exist by any means in an interdependent manner. Okay? So, can we see gradually that actually emptiness is not something that is independent of everything else? Emptiness exists in dependence of appearance, independence of interdependence. Lama Tsongkhapa says in the 3 aspects of the path, Sheyan nawe yota selwa dan tombe meta selshin tomba ni gyodan drebu charwe tsurshena tarzen Sheyan nawe yota selwa dan tombe meta selshin tomba ni gyodan drebu charwe tsurshena tarzen tawe troper miguro. Which means, Sheyan, even more, Nangwe yota selwadans, appearance eliminates the extreme of existence. Appearance means interdependence, how things exist. By seeing how things exists, automatically it eliminates the extreme that things exist in an independent, autonomous way. And emptiness, the lack of inherent existence, it doesn't exist as it appears of being inherent existence, eliminates the extreme of nihilism, which means that reality doesn't exist. Why? Because if it lacks inherent existence, it means that it actually does exist. When you understand that lack of inherent existence and interdependence are two manifestations of the same, they are complementary and not contradictory, that's when we have realized the will of Buddha. Okay? So, emptiness doesn't exist in an independent, autonomous way. There are the parts of emptiness, there is the counterpart of the object of emptiness. It's not something that is like an ultimate state that is on the basis of everything. It's the ultimate nature of everything, yes. The ultimate nature of anything is that it lacks autonomous, independent existence. But the only absolute truth is the lack of an absolute truth. Okay? With this we go through. The remedy itself is released in its own place. Place the essence of the path on the nature of the basis of all. Lam Gingowo Kunshingang La Shas. Place the essence of the path on the meditation of emptiness. Place the essence of the path on the realization on a non-conceptual level on the true nature of reality. Wisdom will increase compassion. Compassion will increase wisdom. The two go together. Okay? So, we should place as the essence of our path the non-conceptual realization of the true nature of reality as a way to deconstruct our grasping at inherent existence. When we deconstruct the grasping of inherent existence, naturally, emotions such as anger, jealousy, even selfishness cannot sustain anymore. Selfishness is based on the appearance of inherent existence of the self. When that is not anymore there, selfishness itself cannot be sustained. Okay? So, the realization of the true nature of reality is the key on the path. So take it as the main part of your practice, together with love and compassion. It's like the two wings necessary for enlightenment. Okay? Because love and compassion gives us also the strength, the need to understand wisdom, the need to realize emptiness. It gives us the strength to move forward. Also because realizing emptiness, it means a profound, deep, deep, deep change of paradigm. And this is something that takes a lot of effort. And in order to do that, what gives the incentive for us to do it is actually love and compassion. Okay? Last part of today. In the period between sessions, which means when we are not meditating, be a creator of illusion. Be aware that you are dreaming. A creator of illusion, it refers to one specific metaphor. We explained before the metaphor of the dream. Now there is the metaphor of illusion. Very quickly. I don't know if you have ever been in the presence of someone that makes an illusion, like a sort of magician. I saw one time in India, I was completely shocked. Okay, it was a local circus. There was this small tent, no black back, Very, very simple. The guy was doing things that I could simply not believe my own eyes. Okay? Like levitating. He had very strange things. Anyhow. So in the ancient times, it is said that there was illusionists. People that make magic with illusion. And they would make small pieces of stone or wood appear as real horses or elephants. Okay? So people would be seeing a real horse, a real elephant, when actually he was just creating this illusion through the power of concentration, through the power of mantra, and through the power of substance, it is said. Okay? So maybe put some particular incense in the air that makes the mind get a little bit dizzy, whatever. Then have some power together with the capacity of hypnosis or who knows what. These people have the capacity to create illusions, which means to make us to see something differently from what it is. So what is explained is that we have 3 moments. There is the person that is looking at the illusion, and the illusion looks real, and the person grasps at the illusion as being real. So you see the horse and the elephant, and you believe a real horse is an elephant. Then there is the illusionist himself or herself that actually is creating the illusion, but in the moment that the illusionist is creating the illusion, he is also under the influence of the spell and the substance. So he also sees the illusion, but he knows that it's just an illusion. He doesn't grasp at it as real, even though it appears as real. He sees the illusion. Then there is the latecomer, someone that enters the room after the illusion was created, so he's not under the effect of the spell and the substance. So he look and he just see a little piece of stone and wood. He doesn't see the illusion. Okay? Now we are under the spell, under the substance, in the sense that reality appears to us as being of inherent existence, and we believe in it. When we are not meditating, we should be like the creators of illusion. Reality appears to us as being of inherent existence, but we know that it is not. It's like this because we are creating this illusion through our own ignorance, to the imprints of our own ignorance. When we are able to go beyond it, when we don't see anymore the illusion, that's becoming a Buddha. So basically, when we are between sessions, we should look at reality. But my advice is, do not focus your attention in the emptiness. Do not focus your attention in the illusory aspect right away. First, without hurry, focus your attention in the appearance of inherent existence. I repeat again, we will never be able to overcome, to deconstruct the grasping at inherent existence if we do not recognize the appearance of inherent existence. So in between sessions, when we are not meditating, we see reality. How does it appear to me? And we start observing how reality manifests itself. How do we perceive reality? How things appear to us? How ourself appear to us? How the mind appear to us? How emptiness appears to us? How reality appear to us? And when we see that it appears as being of inherent existence, then we can deconstruct it and we say that's an illusion because it's not in that way. Okay? Now, I know we made late today. This is a subject that we can stay years on it. Just to say, in the monastic studies like in Sera, it's 4 years only for this subject. It's 4 years, 11 months a day, 11 months a year, 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, only on this subject. Okay? And I had many people that after all these years studying, my friends came to me and say, I understood many things, but I didn't comprehend any. Okay? It's a process that takes time. Okay? So we need to go and listen to it again and again, reflect on it again and again, and it must be tasteful. And the more we do, gradually we are able to understand it from different perspectives until everything starts to make sense. Okay? But we need to dedicate time and energy into that. So as it says here, make it the priority in your life. What do you do in life? I love myself, I love others, and I generate a correct view of reality. That's what I do in life. Okay, I am also a teacher, I work in the bank, I do this, I do that, whatever. But what do we do in life? This is what we are here for. And remember that through the development of wisdom, we can make our love and compassion become deeper and deeper. Just one last thing, to make sure that you are meditating and reflecting in the right way about the correct view of reality. If the more you meditate and reflect upon emptiness, the less you are connected to the world, the less you can feel others, and the less you believe and you see the relationship between cause and effect, it means you are doing the wrong thing. Okay? If the more you meditate on the lack of inherent existence, the strongest interdependence becomes in your life. The stronger you can feel and connect to others. The stronger you can see and believe and understand and feel the law of cause and effect. This means you are doing the right thing. Okay? We do our final dedications for today. And then we still have 2 days to go. I am in a little difficulty because I expected to reach today a little bit further in the text, so I need to think what we do tomorrow. Anyhow, no problem. But I really believe that, as I said in the beginning, we are not here to study the text. We are here to deepen our practice and our understanding. So that's why I prefer to do it without hurry, giving the right time. Because again, what we do here, I don't see myself here as teaching. I see myself here as doing together one analytic meditation. We are familiarizing ourselves together with concepts. Because just to explain the concept, it's easy, but we need to go through a process to analyze and to understand and to familiarize ourselves with together. And that's what we do together. Okay? Jetsun alame kutse rapten chi nam karatrin le chokchur ge padang losan tempe drume sasumgi drove munsela taktu ne gyur chi sashi peke chukshi meto tram rirab lingshi nide gemba di sange shinto mikte ulwargi Drogun namda shingla che parasho yedam Guru ratna mandrala kam niryata yami Kewa kuntu yanda lama dang Dralme cheke pela longche ching Sadan lamge yente rabzone Dorje change kopan yurtoba sho Yanda tawa rinpoche make panama ke gyurchi Kepa nyambra mepa yang kongne konto pelwara sho May the precious correct view of reality which has not yet born arise and grow which has born, have no decline and increase forevermore. Nimo dele tsendele, nime kuyan delek shing, nintsen takto delek pe, kuncho sumke chingi lob, kuncho sumke ngodrubut sol, kuncho sumke trashisho. At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and spring all the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. All'alba o al tramonto, di notte o durante il giorno, possano i tre gioielli concederci le loro benedizioni, possano aiutarci ad ottenere tutte le realizzazioni e cospargere il sentiero della nostra vita con molti segni di buon auspicio. Sem Chösutro, Chölam Tudro, Lam La Parche, Myong Warsho. May the mind become the Dharma. May the Dharma become the path. May the path be free from interferences. Possa la mente diventare il Dharma. Possa il Dharma diventare il sentiero. Possa il sentiero essere libero da interferenze. Mi me tserwe ter chen chen resi dri me kempe wampo champe alia du pong ma lu jom tse sang we da kan chen kepe tso gen tsong kapa lo sang ang trakpe shabla asol wade. Buon appetito. Grazie a tutti. E un testo diceva: il semplice dubitare dell'esistenza intrinseca è un pugno in faccia all'ignoranza, no? One text says, the only doubting of inherent existence is already a punch in the face of ignorance. Okay, so we are in a very good path. Okay.